So, I was in college. It was about 1987, and had rented this room in the bottom of a house from a couple, and it was like a basement. It was pretty crappy, but it was cheap. And so at this time, there was nothing in particular traumatic or unpleasant going on in my life that I can remember to trigger a bad dream or nightmare, if that's what this was. Anyway, I'll just tell it as it happened, or as I experienced it. So I'm asleep in this room, and I wake up, and totally terrified, horrified, for no reason except for whatever I'm sensing there, or hearing, and I'm frozen. I'm paralyzed, can't move anything. Just staring into space, like up at the ceiling. And I can look over at the door to my room, and above the door, there's a light going back and forth like this. You can see it flashing. And the doorknob is going. So that's disturbing. I can move my eyes around. I look down to the end of my bed, and there's a chair there, sitting at the end of the bed. And I see what looks to me to be a baby. Like a baby that has been in a fire. It's charred, like chicken barbecue when it's on too long. The skin is just black, and it's this little tiny baby about this big. And it sees that I'm awake and looking at it, and it goes like that. And of course, I freak out from that, more terrorized, and I try to scream, but I can't. I'm not making any sound. This glob of like jelly stuff comes out of my mouth onto my chest, but I don't make any sound. So I don't wake up at that point. There's an indeterminate amount of time between that time and when I do wake up, which is not like a normal nightmare where you just wake up, gotta get a drink of water or something, get outside, and, take a walk or whatever, think about the dream. It was just like a blackout from there. I woke up in the morning. I remembered the dream. It was horrifying. But I also felt like I wanted to go right back to sleep, which didn't fit with the logic of my mind. It didn't make any sense. I just had the most horrible dream of my life. And logically, I wanted to get up, think about it. It's just to be awake, but I was going back to sleep. So I felt like I was drugged. So I actually went outside the room in the snow, in my underwear, put snow on myself to wake myself up. That's that. That's the end of that dream. Now, that could be written off as just a pretty horrifying dream, and that's probably how I would leave it. Pretty much 95% convinced that was just a dream. But about a year later, pretty much exactly a year later, I was in another apartment, different apartment, another part of the town. Kind of forgotten about that dream. It wasn't really in my mind. I'm asleep in this room, and in this room it was a house. So there were 3 or 4 other people living in the house. So, laying there asleep, and suddenly I wake up again. Same feeling as that last time. Complete horror, paralysis, and I'm laying in a fetal position, kind of facing the wall. The wall is like right here. I'm looking at it, and I think, not again. They got me again. And it's as if I'm in the room totally awake. There's no difference between a dream and being in the room awake, especially how long it seemed to take. So I'm laying there looking at my wall, paralyzed, with the feeling that there's something behind me messing around back there. couldn't hear it, couldn't see it. So I start to feel, well, maybe I can get my hand to start moving if I keep trying to move it little bit by little bit. So I was trying to clench it, unclench it, and slowly over time I got so I could move it maybe about that much. I could close my fingers into a fist, and I was thinking I was going to grab it, whatever it was, with my one hand that was now paralyzed. Then I thought, that's a really great plan. That's a great plan. Please don't do that. But I knew there were other people in the house, so I decided that I couldn't use my vocal cords the same way. I decided that I would make noises to try to wake them up, but noises that I could make. So I was laying there, and I was going, and then I was going, loud as I could. Loud. And one would think that after, a certain amount of time, 3 o'clock in the morning, people will go, shut up! Shut up! No. So again, all this transpired. I didn't wake up right then. I woke up in the morning, missing time between when I had the dream or whatever happened. And this was very convincing, but still could have been a dream. Still in that realm of possibility. Very, very much so, because that's what makes sense. But I didn't tell anybody in the house anything, and no one said anything to me like, why were you making fart noises very loudly last night? Nothing. I see them at breakfast, and I talked to 2 of them separately. So I asked the one person, a girl, that's in a room right across the hall from my room. And I asked her, did you have any dreams last night? I didn't tell her I had had any dreams. And she said, oh yeah. I had a weird dream that, this is the girl now, she said, I had a weird dream that I was in an operating room, like those medical operating rooms where they train students, and I was being operated on. I was down on the table, and up above there were all these people watching that I couldn't see. I was like, it's interesting. It's an interesting dream. Later, I talked to the guy that was immediately across the hall from my room, right across. And I asked him if he'd had any dreams, and he said, yeah. He said, I woke up in my room. I was awake in my room, and I was laying there, and my cat was examining me all over my body. It was like touching me. And it looked exactly like my cat, except its head was this big and it had eyes like this. So that was the end of that episode, and I found that very convincing. I never really told the people that, hey, I had a dream that I was examined by aliens last night, and I think they examined you too. Now with that, I'd say I'm about 95% sure that that's what was happening. It has to be either that, or that I had a dream that was so strong that I projected it to the other people, because it's pretty much exactly the same dream for all 3 people that were involved, especially the person that was awakened in their room and examined by a cat with big eyes. So that was the last of those dreams or events that I had that I could say was possibly real event of aliens coming in and doing something. I continued to have dreams after that where I felt that there were the presence of these entities disguised as people that I knew. They would be friends or family, whatever, but they would always float above the ground. They float like this far above the ground, which is a dead giveaway for not being a human being, not being your friend. I had a dream I was on a train with a bunch of people. We were being taken someplace, and somebody gave themselves away by floating. Another time I was in the back of a truck, like an army truck, with all these people, and my friend was there talking to me, and he started to float above the ground, and I said, hey, you know what? That's going to give you away that you're not who you say you are if you're floating above the ground. And he was like, oh, okay. I had another one of those dreams where I woke up in a room that I didn't recognize. bamboo all around it. And I had that feeling of being drugged, being paralyzed, but this wasn't the room I went to sleep in. I didn't know where I was. And I looked around and I started to feel as if I was drugged, and I said, I'm not going to do this again. So I got up out of the bed and just about falling down, I just kept moving my body like this. I was like moving and moving and moving, so that, I forgot to say, I was laying there and I was starting to get alarmed. A voice started to sing to me, singing this lullaby, and it was going la 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 la, which is nice. But then I realized that it was one person singing in 3-part harmony with themselves. So it was da 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 la 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 all at once, which alarming again. And I got out of the bed. I didn't see whoever it was, and I kept moving until I could move. Then the door to the room flew open like this, and I saw a silhouette, the classic Alien X-Files silhouette, like this, very skinny, standing there, looking in, and then it went and came in toward me until it was bumping into my chest like this, and I beat the hell out of it. I just started punching and punching and punching. So I don't think that went the way it was supposed to go. After that, I would have various dreams where I encountered these people, whatever they were, and I would try to tell everyone else about it, that they're here, look, see these people floating, they're not real, they're aliens, whatever, and everyone would just laugh and be, So I was with another group of people in this dream telling them, look, they're coming to look at us, and this guy comes floating up the stairs and floating down the hall, and I'm like, look, there he is, look at this guy floating, coming down the stairs. And I ran up to him and I said, you know what, I know what you're doing, and I don't want you to come visit me in dreams. If you want to talk to me, see me, you can come see me when I'm awake. And the guy said, you can't do that, you don't do that. And I said, well, I don't want you coming anymore, I don't like this. He said, alright, okay. And he starts to leave. And he's floating away, he's floating back down the stairs, and I say, hey! And he looks over and I said, someday I'm going to figure out how to do this, and I'm going to come into your dreams. He kind of smiled and he said, maybe you will, maybe you will. So that's my story about that. Believe it or not. Take it as you will. I've never... and see the movie Communion, if you want to know what this is like. It's very spooky and very freaky, this movie. And in that, it's Christopher Walken, and he undergoes hypnosis therapy, which is something I wouldn't want to do to uncover whatever that really was, the dream or whatever. Because I've heard that they can plant things, sort of. You might imagine something, or they say something that then becomes real. Well, maybe you remember stuff that you do not want to remember. And still, you're never quite sure whether it is real. Like if I had, not sure that I would want to see a videotape of me being examined by whatever from that room, but I would rather have that than a memory that's being remembered, because you can't ever be sure. But I'm pretty much 95% sure. And all I can say is people who I tell this story to tend to be interviewed by these people as well. So, sleep tight tonight, everybody. Enjoy.